Hey there, viewer. Picture this, it's a bright, sunny day. The sky is blue, the birds are chirping, and I'm just chilling outside in my yard. My name's Jake Miller, and I'm a regular kid who likes regular stuff like riding my bike, playing with my dog, and eating ice cream on hot days. My house is small but cool, with a big yard and a driveway where I keep my bike. Life was pretty awesome, you know? Everything was peaceful, everything was fun until she showed up. Her name was Karen. Yeah, that Karen. She wasn't just any neighbor. Oh no, she was special in the worst way. She moved into the house next door a few months ago, and ever since then, things got wild. Karen wasn't like most people who smile and wave when they see you. Nope. She acted like she was the queen of the whole street. Like she owned every house, every tree, every blade of grass. She'd walk around with her nose in the air, telling everyone what to do. Cut your grass, she'd yell. Paint your fence, she'd nag. Don't leave toys outside, she'd complain. Everyone on our street knew her as the bossy lady who never stopped talking. She loved picking fights and pointing fingers. If something wasn't perfect, Karen was there to let you know. But me? I saw something different. I wasn't scared of her like the other kids. I didn't run inside when she started shouting. Nope, I watched her. I listened. And I learned stuff about her that nobody else knew. See, Karen thought she could boss me around just like everyone else. She thought I was just some quiet kid who'd do whatever she said. But she was wrong. Dead wrong. I had a secret plan cooking in my head, and it was gonna shake things up big time. She had no idea what was coming. Not a clue. Before we jump into this crazy story, I've got a fun question for you. Have you ever had a neighbor who drove you totally nuts? Maybe they yelled too much, or stole your ball, or complained about silly stuff? Drop it in the comments down below, I want to hear all about it. Oh, and while you're at it, tell me where you're watching from today. Are you at home? At school? Somewhere super cool? Let me know. And hey, if you love wild, awesome stories like this one, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Okay, so let's get back to Karen. What was her deal? Why was she so mean and bossy? Well, let me paint you a picture. It all started on that sunny day I was telling you about. I was outside in my yard, kicking a soccer ball around. My dog, Rusty, was running after it, barking like crazy. He's a little brown dog with floppy ears, and he's my best buddy. We were having the best time. The sun was warm, the grass was soft, and I didn't have a single worry in the world. My bike was parked on the driveway, right where I always left it. It's a blue bike with a bell that goes ding ding when I ring it. Nothing fancy, just my favorite thing to ride around the neighborhood. Then, out of nowhere, I heard her voice. Jake Miller, she shouted. I froze. My soccer ball rolled to a stop. Rusty tilted his head and looked at me like, uh-oh, what's happening? I turned around, and there she was, Karen, standing at the edge of her yard, glaring at me. She had her hands on her hips, her face all scrunched up like she'd just eaten a sour lemon. She was wearing a big, floppy hat and a bright pink shirt that hurt my eyes to look at. Her hair was all poofy, and she had this look that said, I'm in charge here. What's that junk doing on your driveway? She snapped, pointing at my bike. I blinked. Junk. My bike wasn't junk. It was my pride and joy. I rode it every day to the park, to my friend's house, everywhere. But to Karen, it was a problem. It looks messy, she said, her voice loud enough for the whole street to hear. You need to move it right now, young man. I stood there, staring at her. My driveway wasn't even dirty. It was just a normal driveway with my bike on it. What was her problem? I didn't get it. It's my driveway, I said, crossing my arms. I can put my bike wherever I want. Oh boy, that was the wrong thing to say. Her eyes got huge, like two big balloons about to pop. Her face turned red, and she took a step closer. Oh, we'll see about that, she hissed, like a snake ready to strike. Then she turned around and stomped back to her house, muttering stuff under her breath. I didn't know it yet, but that was the start of everything. That was the moment Karen decided she didn't like me and she was gonna do something big to prove it. But here's the thing, I wasn't just gonna sit there and let her win. Nope, not me. I'm Jake Miller, and I don't back down easy. I had a feeling she was up to something sneaky, and I was right. What she did next? It was wild. Totally crazy. And it made me mad enough to start thinking about how to get her back. But let's not rush ahead too fast. I want to tell you more about that day, cause it's important. After Karen stomped off, I kicked my soccer ball again. Rusty barked and chased it, wagging his tail. The sun was still shining, and the birds were still singing. Everything seemed normal, but deep down, I knew something was coming. I could feel it, like when you know a storm's about to hit even though the sky's clear. Karen wasn't done with me. She wasn't the type to let things go. She was tricky, and I had to be ready. Later that afternoon, I sat on my porch with a glass of lemonade. It was cold and sweet, and I sipped it while watching the street. My mom was inside making dinner spaghetti, my favorite. My dad was at work, and my little sister was playing with her dolls upstairs. It was just a regular day for us. But across the street, Karen's house was quiet. Too quiet. Her car was parked out front, a shiny red car she loved more than anything. She'd wash it every weekend, scrubbing it until it sparkled. She'd even yell at kids if they got too close to it with their bikes or balls. That car was her baby. I kept my eye on her house while I drank my lemonade. Rusty sat next to me, chewing on a stick. I patted his head and thought about what Karen said. "Move your bike," she'd ordered. Why did she care so much? It wasn't her driveway. It wasn't her bike. She just wanted to boss me around, like she bossed everyone else. The more I thought about it, the more it bugged me. Who did she think she was? The queen of the neighborhood? No way. This was my street too, and I wasn't gonna let her tell me what to do. That's when I started getting ideas. Little ideas at first, like tiny seeds planted in my brain. What if I didn't just let her win? What if I did something to show her she couldn't mess with me? I didn't know what yet, but I knew it had to be good. Something smart. Something sneaky. Something that'd make her think twice before picking on me again. I leaned back in my chair, staring at her shiny red car, and a tiny smile crept onto my face. Oh yeah, I was onto something. The sun started dipping lower in the sky, turning everything orange and pink. Kids rode by on their bikes, laughing and shouting. A breeze rustled the trees, and Rusty barked at a squirrel running up a trunk. It was a perfect afternoon, but my mind was racing. Karen thought she could scare me, but she didn't know me at all. I wasn't just some kid she could push around. I was Jake Miller, and I had a trick or two up my sleeve. She'd find out soon enough. So, that's where it all began, on a sunny day with birds chirping and a bossy neighbor who thought she ruled the world. Karen didn't know it yet, but she'd just started a war. A war with me. And I wasn't gonna lose. No way, no how. What happened next? Oh, it gets wilder. Way wilder. But I'll save that for later. For now, just picture me sitting there, sipping lemonade, plotting my next move. Karen thought she was the boss, but I was about to show her who's really in charge. What do you think so far? Crazy, right? Stick with me, cause this story's just getting started. So there I was, Jake Miller, sitting on my porch with my lemonade, watching Karen's house like a hawk. The sun was still up, but it was getting lower, painting the sky with streaks of orange and gold. Rusty, my little brown dog, was sprawled out next to me, panting from all that soccer ball chasing. My bike sat on the driveway, right where I'd left it, its blue paint shining in the light. Everything looked calm and normal, but inside my head? Oh, it was buzzing like a beehive. Karen had started something, and I wasn't gonna let it slide. Let's rewind a bit, though, cause I want to tell you more about that day. It's important to get the full picture. Earlier, before Karen yelled at me, I'd been riding my bike around the block. The wind was in my hair, and I was ringing that ding-ding bell just for fun. My friend Tommy waved at me from his yard. "Hey, Jake," he called. "Wanna play catch later?" I grinned and shouted back, "Yeah, after dinner." Tommy's a cool kid, he's got freckles and a big laugh, and we've been buddies since kindergarten. Life was simple like that, bike rides, friends, and no worries. But then I rolled back home, parked my bike, and that's when Karen popped up like a grumpy jack in the box. I can still hear her voice in my head, sharp and loud, "What's that junk doing on your driveway?" Junk. My bike wasn't junk, it was awesome. I'd saved up my allowance for months to get it. Painted it blue myself with Dad's help. It had a little scratch on the side from when I crashed into a bush last summer, but that just made it mine. Karen didn't care about that, though. To her, it was trash messing up her perfect little world. After she stomped off, I didn't tell Mom or Dad about it right away. I didn't want to bother them. Mom was busy stirring spaghetti sauce, humming a song, and Dad wasn't even home yet. My little sister, Lily, was upstairs giggling with her dolls. She's only 6, and she thinks everything's funny. I could hear her through the open window, "Barbie, you sit here. No, over there." Normal stuff. I didn't want to ruin the vibe by whining about Karen. Plus, I'm not a winner. I'm a doer. I fix things my own way. So I sat there with my lemonade, letting the ice clink against the glass. It was cold and sweet, the best kind of drink for a hot day. Rusty looked up at me with his big puppy eyes, like he knew something was up. "Don't worry, boy," I whispered, scratching his ears. "We've got this." He wagged his tail and went back to chewing his stick. Dogs are the best, they don't ask questions, they just stick by you. Across the street, Karen's house stayed quiet. Her red car gleamed in the driveway, all shiny and proud. That car was her favorite thing ever. She'd park it there every night, lock it up tight, and check it a million times to make sure no one touched it. Once, I saw her yell at a kid named Mikey just for kicking a ball too close. "Stay away from my car," she screeched. Mikey ran off crying, and Karen just smirked like she'd won a prize. That's the kind of person she was, mean for no reason. The more I thought about her, the madder I got. Why did she think she could boss me around? My driveway wasn't her business. My bike wasn't hurting anybody. She just wanted to feel big by making me feel small. But I wasn't small. I was Jake Miller, and I had ideas. Big ideas. Sneaky ideas. I didn't know exactly what I'd do yet, but I knew it'd be something she'd never forget. Something to wipe that smirk off her face. The sun kept sinking, and the air got cooler. A couple of kids zoomed by on scooters, laughing and shouting. "Race you to the corner," one yelled. I smiled a little, 'cause that used to be me and Tommy. But right then, I wasn't in the mood to play. I was too busy thinking. Planning. Watching. Karen's curtains twitched, and I saw her peek out. She was probably spying on me, making sure I didn't dare touch my bike again. Ha! If she only knew what was coming. I took another sip of lemonade and leaned back in my chair. The wood creaked under me, and Rusty rolled over, stretching out his paws. The street was settling down now, fewer bikes, fewer shouts. Dinner smells floated out from the kitchen, spaghetti sauce, garlic, yum. Mom poked her head out the door. "Jake, wash up soon, okay? Food's almost ready," she said with a smile. "Sure, Mom," I called back. She didn't know about Karen yet, and I wasn't gonna tell her. This was my fight. I looked at my bike again. It wasn't hurting anybody, just sitting there all innocent. Karen had no right to call it junk. No right to threaten me. "We'll see about that," she'd said. What did that even mean? Was she gonna yell at me again? Tell my parents? Do something worse? I didn't know, but I wasn't scared. I was ready. Whatever she threw at me, I'd throw something back, something bigger, something better. The sky turned darker, all purple and pink now. Stars were starting to peek out, tiny dots of light. Rusty yawned and curled up next to my feet. I finished my lemonade, the last drop sliding down my throat. Karen's house was still quiet, but I knew she was in there, plotting her next move. She thought she was so smart, so tough. She thought I'd just roll over and take it? Nope. Not this kid. Here's the thing about me, I don't give up. When Tommy and I play soccer and we're losing, I keep kicking till the end. When I fell off my bike that time and scratched it, I got right back on. When Lily spills juice on my homework, I don't cry, I just redo it. That's who I am. And Karen? She didn't know that yet. She saw me as some quiet kid she could push around. But quiet doesn't mean weak. Quiet can mean dangerous. I stood up, stretching my arms. Rusty jumped up too, wagging his tail like we were about to go on an adventure. Not yet, buddy, I said, patting his head. Soon, though. I glanced at Karen's car one more time. That shiny red thing she loved so much. Maybe that was the key. Maybe that was how I'd get her back. I didn't have it all figured out yet, but the idea was growing, like a balloon getting bigger and bigger. Inside, Mom called, "Jake, dinner." I grabbed my glass and headed in, Rusty trotting behind me. The kitchen smelled amazing, and Lily was already at the table, swinging her legs. "Spaghetti," she cheered. I smiled, but my brain was still outside, still on Karen. She'd started this war, and I was gonna finish it. Not today, not tonight, but soon. Real soon. So that's how it all kicked off, friends. A sunny day, a bossy neighbor, and me, Jake Miller, ready to fight back. Karen thought she was the boss of everything, but she was about to learn a big lesson. What happened next? Oh, it's wild. Super wild. But we'll get there. For now, just imagine me at that table, twirling spaghetti, plotting my revenge. This story's just beginning, and it's gonna be awesome. It all started when Karen decided my driveway looked too messy. Yep, that's right, my driveway, my little spot in front of my house, was suddenly her big problem. I'd parked my bike there like always. It wasn't anything fancy, just a regular old bike with blue paint and a bell that went ding ding. I loved that bike. Rode it everywhere, to the park, to Tommy's house, even just around the block for fun. To me, it was the best. But to Karen? Oh no, it was a crime. A big, messy crime. Picture this, it was a sunny afternoon, and I was inside grabbing a snack. I'd left my bike on the driveway, leaning against the garage door, just chilling. No big deal, right? Wrong. Karen thought different. She came storming over from her house next door, her feet stomping like she was mad at the ground itself. She stopped right in my yard, hands on her hips, and stared at my bike like it had just insulted her. Her face was all scrunched up, and her floppy hat flopped in the breeze. She looked ridiculous, but also kinda scary. "This junk is an eyesore," she yelled, pointing at my bike like it was a pile of garbage. Her voice was so loud, I bet the birds stopped singing just to listen. I poked my head out the door, a peanut butter sandwich in my hand, and blinked at her. Junk. My bike wasn't junk. It was my buddy, my ride, my freedom. "Move it, or I'll make you regret it," she shouted, shaking her finger at me. Her eyes were narrow, and her lips were tight, like she was ready to explode. I chewed my sandwich and shrugged. "It's my driveway, Karen," I said, calm as could be. I wasn't trying to fight her, not yet, anyway. I just wanted her to go away. But oh boy, that was a big mistake. Her face turned red, like a tomato about to burst. Her eyes got huge, and she took a step closer. "We'll see about that," she hissed, her voice low and mean, like a snake sneaking through the grass. Then she spun around and marched back to her house, her pink shirt flapping behind her. I stood there, sandwich halfway to my mouth, thinking, what's she gonna do? Yell some more? I didn't know it yet, but she had something way worse in mind. That night, I didn't think much of it. I ate dinner with Mom, Dad, and Lily. Spaghetti, my favorite. We laughed about silly stuff, like how Lily's doll fell in the bathtub once. Karen was just a grumpy memory in the back of my head. I went to bed, dreaming about riding my bike down big hills, the wind whooshing past me. Everything was fine. Perfect, even. I slept like a rock, not a worry in the world. But the next morning? Oh man, it was a nightmare. I woke up early 'cause Rusty, my dog, was barking like crazy. He was at the window, paws up, tail wagging like he'd seen a squirrel. I rubbed my eyes, yawned, and stumbled over to see what's up. "What is it, boy?" I mumbled, still half asleep. Then I looked outside and my jaw dropped. My driveway wasn't my driveway anymore. It was a mess. A big, wet, gooey mess of gray cement, all slopped over the pavement like someone spilled a giant bucket of mud. My bike was stuck in it, half buried, its front wheel poking out like it was drowning. I blinked once, twice, thinking maybe I was still dreaming. Nope. This was real. And there she was, Karen. Standing right in the middle of my yard, holding a shovel like it was a prize. Her hands were dirty, her shirt was speckled with gray spots, and she had this big, nasty smirk on her face. Told you I'd fix it, she sneered, her voice dripping with pride. She looked at the cement, then at me, like she'd just won a game. No more junk now, huh, she added, laughing a little. That laugh, it was sharp, like a poke in the ribs. She thought she was so clever, so big, so tough. I stood there in my pajamas, barefoot on the porch, staring at the mess. My bike, my awesome blue bike, was trapped. The driveway I'd swept clean last week was ruined. My heart started thumping hard, and my hands curled into fists. I could feel my face getting hot, my blood boiling like water in a pot. She'd done this. Karen had snuck over in the night, dumped cement all over my stuff, and now she was gloating about it. Who does that? Who pours cement on a kid's driveway just cause they don't like a bike? Karen, that's who. I wanted to yell. I wanted to run over, grab that shovel, and tell her she was the worst neighbor ever. I could have screamed, "What's wrong with you?" until my throat hurt. My legs itched to charge at her, to make her take it back. But I didn't. Nope. I stopped myself. I took a big, deep breath, let it out slow, and just stared at her. Her smirk got bigger, like she thought I was scared. Like she thought she'd won. But she didn't know what was going on in my head. See, deep down, I wasn't panicking. I wasn't crying. I was thinking. My brain was spinning like a top, and a tiny smile crept onto my face. Yeah, a smile. Not a big one, just a little curl at the corners. Because right then, I knew something Karen didn't. I wasn't just some quiet kid she could boss around. I wasn't gonna run to mom and dad or whine to my friends. I was Jake Miller, and I had a spark inside me, a spark she just lit with her stupid cement stunt. She kept standing there, smirking, waiting for me to freak out. "What's the matter, Jake? Don't like my decorating?" she teased, tapping the shovel on the ground. Tap, tap, tap. Each sound made my smile twitch a little more. I didn't say a word. Just looked at her, then at the cement, then back at her. My eyes were calm, but inside. Oh, I was mad. Mad as a hornet. But I hid it. I stuffed it down deep, where she couldn't see. Rusty barked again, bouncing around my feet. He didn't get it, he thought this was some fun game. "SHH, boy," I whispered, patting his head. Karen laughed again. "Even your dog knows I'm right," she said, turning to walk away. Her boots squished in the grass, leaving little muddy prints. She thought it was over. She thought she'd showed me who's boss. Ha! She had no idea. I watched her go, that shovel swinging by her side. My driveway was a disaster, wet cement oozing everywhere, my bike sinking deeper every second. Mom was gonna flip when she saw this. Dad was gonna ask a million questions. Lily might even cry cause she liked riding her scooter there. But me? I wasn't worried about that yet. I was too busy plotting. Karen thought she'd won the war with one big move, but this wasn't the end. This was just the start. I turned and went inside, Rusty trotting after me. The house was still quiet. Mom was in the shower, Dad was at work, Lily was asleep. I grabbed a glass of water and sat at the kitchen table, staring out the window at the mess. My bike's bell glinted in the sun, a little piece of blue sticking out of the gray. It looked sad, trapped like that. But I wasn't sad. I was fired up. Karen had crossed a line, a big, fat, cement-covered line, and now it was my turn. What could I do, though? I didn't have cement to dump on her stuff. I wasn't gonna yell or fight her with fists, that's not my style. I'm smarter than that. Sneakier. I tapped my fingers on the table, thinking hard. My eyes wandered outside again, past my driveway, over to her house. And then I saw it, her shiny red car. Parked right there, all perfect and clean, like it was laughing at me too. Oh yeah, that car. She loved it more than anything. Washed it every day, yelled at kids who got close. It was her pride and joy. That's when the spark in my head turned into a flame. A little idea popped up, small at first, but growing fast. What if I hit her where it hurt? What if I messed with something she cared about? Not her driveway, not her yard, but that car. My smile got bigger. I didn't know how yet, but I knew I'd figure it out. Sand, maybe. Water. Something simple, something sneaky. Something to make her regret ever picking up that shovel. Mom came downstairs, her hair wet from the shower. "Jake, what's Rusty barking at?" she asked, tying her robe. I shrugged, playing it cool. "Just a squirrel," I said. She nodded and started making coffee. I didn't tell her about the cement, not yet. I wanted to handle this myself first. This was between me and Karen, and I was gonna win. So there it was, the tension building, the fight starting. Karen thought she'd shut me down with her cement trick, but she'd just woken me up. She thought I was quiet, weak, easy to push. Big mistake. I was quiet, sure, but I was strong too. And I was ready to push back. Hard. Days passed after Karen dumped that cement on my driveway, and she kept acting like she'd won the biggest prize ever. She didn't just walk by my house, she strutted. You know, that fancy walk where you swing your hips and hold your head high? Yeah, that's what she did. Every day, she'd march past with her friends, two ladies with big hats and loud laughs, giggling and pointing at my yard. "Look at that mess," she'd say, loud enough for me to hear through the window. "I taught that kid a lesson he won't forget." Then they'd all cackle like a bunch of happy chickens, proud of her mean trick. My driveway was still a disaster. The cement had dried hard, locking my bike in place like it was stuck in quicksand. The gray stuff cracked a little in the sun, but it wasn't going anywhere. Mom and Dad were mad when they saw it. "Who did this?" Mom yelled that first morning. I shrugged and said, "Karen." Dad shook his head and muttered, "She's trouble." They talked about calling someone to fix it, but that'd cost money, and we didn't have a lot extra. So for now, it stayed a big, ugly reminder of Karen's stunt. My buddies, Tommy and Mikey, came over a few days later. We sat on my porch, eating popsicles, staring at the cemented bike. "She's crazy, Jake," Tommy said, licking his orange popsicle. "Totally nuts. You should just let it go." Mikey nodded, his green popsicle dripping on his shirt. "Yeah, man, she's not worth it. She'll yell at you again if you fight back." They were my best friends, and they meant well. They didn't want me getting in more trouble. But me? I wasn't ready to quit. No way. Karen didn't get to win that easy. I leaned back in my chair, the wood creaking under me. "Nah," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "She doesn't scare me." Tommy raised his eyebrows, and Mikey stopped mid-lick. "What are you gonna do?" Mikey asked, his eyes big. I just smiled a little, not a big grin, just a tiny one, and said, "You'll see." They looked at each other, confused, but I didn't spill it yet. I wasn't sure myself what I'd do, but I knew one thing: I wasn't giving up. Not now, not ever. So I started watching her. Every day, I'd peek out my window or sit on the porch with Rusty, my dog, keeping an eye on Karen. She was like a clock, same stuff all the time. Mornings, she'd water her flowers, yelling at any kid who rode by too fast. Afternoons, she'd sit on her porch with a glass of tea, glaring at the world. Evenings, she'd check her car, her shiny red car that she loved more than anything. She'd walk around it, wiping off tiny specks of dust with a rag, making sure it sparkled. "Perfect," she'd say out loud, patting the hood like it was a pet. "Nobody's gonna ruin you." That car was her baby. She parked it right in front of her house every night, under the streetlight so it glowed like a ruby. If a bird flew too close, she'd shoo it away. If a leaf fell on it, she'd snatch it off. Once, I saw her chase Tommy with a broom cause his soccer ball bounced near it. "Stay away from my car," she hollered, waving that broom like a sword. Tommy ran off laughing, but Karen wasn't joking. That car was everything to her. And that's when I saw it, really saw it. Not just the car, but the chance. It hit me like a lightning bolt one afternoon while I was tossing a stick for Rusty in the yard. Karen was out there, polishing her car again, humming some tune. I stopped, stick in hand, and watched her. She rubbed that rag over the hood, smiling like it was her best friend. Rusty barked, and I shushed him, my brain spinning. Her car. Her perfect, shiny red car. That's where I'd get her. Not her flowers, not her porch, her car. It was her weak spot, her treasure. Mess with that, and she'd feel it. I didn't tell Tommy or Mikey my plan yet. They'd probably say it was too risky. She'll catch you, they'd warn. Maybe they'd be right. But I didn't care. This wasn't about being safe, this was about being smart. Sneaky. I'd watched her long enough to know her moves. She locked her house tight at night, went to bed by 9, and never looked out after that. Her car just sat there, all alone, waiting. Waiting for me. That's when the idea hit me. Sand. Yep, sand, simple, sneaky, satisfying sand. It popped into my head like a cartoon light bulb. We had a big bag of it in the garage, left over from when Dad fixed the sandbox last summer. It was just sitting there in a corner, all dusty and forgotten. I ran inside that day, pretending I was grabbing a soda, and checked it out. The bag was heavy, but I could carry it. Grainy, dry sand, perfect for a little payback. I lifted it a bit, felt the weight, and grinned. Oh, Karen, I whispered to myself, you're gonna wish you never messed with me. I didn't do anything right away, though. Nope, I'm not that dumb. I had to plan it, make it perfect. So every night, I started sneaking closer to her car just a little at a time, testing the waters. The first night, I waited till Mom and Dad were asleep. Lily was snoring in her room, and Rusty was curled up on my bed. I slipped on my sneakers, grabbed a flashlight, and tiptoed out the back door. The air was cool, the stars were bright, and the street was dead quiet. I stuck to the shadows, moving slow, my heart thumping like a drum. Karen's house was dark, her curtains shut tight. That red car glowed under the streetlight, all shiny and proud. I crouched behind a bush in my yard, peeking out. No movement, no sounds, just me and the car. I didn't touch it that night, just watched. I needed to know if she'd hear me, if her dog would bark, if anything would go wrong. She didn't have a dog, though I'd never seen one. Good. One less problem. The next night, I got braver. I snuck out again, this time crossing the street. I stayed low, ducking behind mailboxes and trees, my flashlight off so no one would spot me. I got right up to her yard, hiding behind her big oak tree. The car was so close I could have touched it just a few steps away. My hands got sweaty, and my breathing was fast, but I didn't move. Not yet. I just stared at it, imagining that sand pouring in, picturing her face when it wouldn't start. Oh yeah, that'd be sweet. Each night, I pushed it a little more. One time, I tapped the car's bumper with my finger, just a tiny tap, super quiet. Nothing happened. No lights, no yells. Karen was clueless, snoring away inside. Another night, I circled the whole car, checking it out. The gas tank was on the side, a little flap I could pop open. Easy. Too easy. My plan was growing, getting clearer. Sand in the gas tank, simple, sneaky, perfect. It'd mess up her car without me having to break anything big. She'd never know it was me till it was too late. Back home, I kept it cool. Mom asked why I looked tired one morning. Just stayed up reading, I lied, munching my cereal. She bought it. Tommy and Mikey kept saying, forget Karen, man. I'd nod, pretending they were right, but inside I was laughing. They didn't know I was out there every night, inching closer to payback. Karen strutted by during the day, still bragging, still thinking she'd crushed me. Nice driveway, Jake, she'd yell, her friends snickering. I'd wave, all polite, hiding my grin. Let her laugh. Let her think she'd won. She'd see soon enough. One afternoon, I tested the sand. Took a handful from the bag and sprinkled it in the grass, quiet, soft, no noise. Perfect. I hid the bag behind some old boxes in the garage, ready for the big night. I didn't know when yet, but I'd know when it felt right. The moon had to be just dark enough, the street just quiet enough. I was patient. I could wait. Karen had no idea I was onto her, no clue I'd found her weak spot. So that's how it went, days of her gloating, nights of me sneaking. The tension was building, like a rubber band stretching tighter and tighter. She thought she'd taught me a lesson, but I was about to teach her one. My buddies didn't get it, my family didn't know, and Karen? She was blind as a bat. That shiny red car was her pride and it was gonna be her downfall. I was ready, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Then came the big night. Oh boy, it was perfect, like everything I'd been waiting for clicked into place. The moon was high in the sky, round and bright, shining down like a spotlight. But the street? It was quiet. Super quiet. No cars zooming, no kids laughing, no dogs barking, just stillness. I peeked out my window, holding my breath, and saw it, Karen's shiny red car. It sat there in her driveway, all polished and proud, glowing under the streetlight like it was showing off. She'd washed it that afternoon. I'd watched her scrub it with a sponge, humming her happy little tune. She had no idea what was coming. Not a clue. I'd been planning this for days, sneaking around, waiting for the right time. And now? Now was it? My heart was jumping in my chest, thumping like a drum, boom, boom, boom. I could feel it in my ears, loud and fast, but I wasn't scared. Nope. I was ready. I tiptoed to the garage, where I'd hidden the sandbag behind some old boxes. It was heavy, but I hugged it tight, my fingers digging into the rough plastic. This was it, the payback for my ruined driveway, all wrapped up in one sneaky bag of sand. I slipped on my sneakers, the ones with the quiet solace, and grabbed my flashlight. I didn't turn it on yet, too risky. The house was dark and silent. Mom and Dad were asleep, their snores buzzing through the walls. Lily was in her room, probably dreaming about dolls. Rusty, my dog, lifted his head from my bed, his ears perked up. "Stay here, boy," I whispered, patting his fuzzy head. He yawned and flopped back down, too sleepy to care. Good. I didn't need him barking and waking everybody up. Out the back door I went, slow and careful. The night air hit my face cool and crisp, making my nose tingle. I shut the door soft as a feather, no clicks, no creaks. The sandbag bumped against my leg as I crept through the yard, sticking to the shadows. Bushes scratched my arms, but I didn't mind. I was on a mission. My eyes darted to Karen's house, dark, curtains closed, no lights. She was asleep, probably snoring under her big, fluffy blanket. Perfect. Her car was all mine. I crossed the street, low and quiet, like a ninja in the movies. My sneakers barely tapped the pavement, soft, soft, soft. I ducked behind a mailbox, then a tree, checking every few steps. No one around. No cars coming. Just me, the moon, and that shiny red target. I got to her yard and slid behind her big oak tree, the one with the twisty branches. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might pop out, but I grinned anyway. This was it. The big moment. Karen's car was right there, just a few feet away. It looked so fancy, so perfect, like it was daring me to touch it. I set the sandbag down real gentle, no noise, and crouched low. My hands were sweaty, shaking a little, but I wiped them on my pants and took a deep breath. I crawled closer, inch by inch, until I was right next to it. The gas tank was on the side, a little flap I'd seen before. I reached out, slow as a snail, and popped it open. Click. It was tiny, quiet as a mouse. I froze, listening. Nothing. No lights, no shouts. Karen didn't hear a thing. I grabbed the sandbag and dragged it over, my arms shaking from the weight. I untied the top, and the sand smelled dry and dusty, like the sandbox in summer. I tipped it toward the gas tank, careful not to spill. Then I poured. Oh man, it was awesome. The sand slid in, a soft shhhh sound, grain after grain, like a little river of revenge. Every bit that went in felt like payback for my driveway, for the cement, for her smirk, for all her mean words. I kept going, slow and steady, watching it disappear into the tank. My grin got bigger with every handful. She'd never see this coming. Never. It took a while longer than I thought. The bag was big, and I wanted it all in there. My arms got tired, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. This was too good. When the last grains trickled out, I shook the bag to make sure it was empty. Done. I closed the gas flap click and stepped back, wiping my hands on my shirt. Sand stuck to my fingers, gritty and cool, but I didn't care. I looked at the car, still shiny, still proud, but now it had a secret inside. A sandy, sneaky secret. I grinned so wide my face hurt. She was gonna flip. I grabbed the empty bag and crept back home, retracing my steps. Tree, mailbox, shadows. The street stayed quiet, the moon watching me like a friend. I slipped inside, locked the door, and tiptoed to my room. Rusty wagged his tail but didn't get up. I kicked off my shoes, hid the bag under my bed, and climbed under the covers. My heart was still racing, but I felt good. Real good. I closed my eyes, picturing Karen's face in the morning, and fell asleep smiling. Morning hit fast. I woke up to screams, loud, wild screams that jolted me out of bed. My car. My car. It was Karen, wailing like a siren. I jumped up, ran to the window, and peeked out. Oh wow, it was better than I'd dreamed. Her shiny red car was in the driveway, but it wasn't shiny anymore. Black smoke poured out from under the hood, puffing up in big, ugly clouds. The engine sputtered and coughed, like it was choking on something. I knew what. Karen stood there in her robe, her hair all messy, her hands flapping like crazy. No, 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 she cried, stomping her feet. I pulled on a shirt and shorts, grabbed a glass of orange juice, and strolled to the front door. I leaned against it, casual as could be, sipping my drink. Neighbors started popping out. Old Mr. Jenkins with his cane, Mrs. Lopez with her baby, even Tommy and Mikey, rubbing sleepy eyes. They gathered around Karen's driveway, whispering. What happened? Mrs. Lopez asked. Did it break? Mr. Jenkins grumbled. Karen spun around, her face red and sweaty. It was fine yesterday, she yelled. Someone did this. She turned the key again, and the car made this awful grinding noise, growling, sputter, cough, then more smoke. The smell was bad, like burnt rubber and dirt mixed together. Neighbors covered their noses, stepping back. Karen kicked the tire, screaming, my perfect ride? It's toast. She looked like she might cry, her hands pulling at her hair. I sipped my juice, cool and calm, acting like I didn't know a thing. But inside? Oh, I was cheering. Jumping up and down, fist-pumping, cheering. She thought she could bury me in cement, but I buried her pride in sand. Tommy shuffled over, yawning. Whoa, Jake, her car's messed up bad, he said, eyes wide. I nodded, all innocent. Yeah, weird, huh? Mikey joined us, scratching his head. Think she ran over something, he asked. I shrugged. Maybe. Or maybe it's just bad luck. They didn't suspect me, not even a little. I was too good, too sneaky. I'd covered my tracks perfect. Karen kept wailing, stomping around like a mad chicken. I'll find out who did this, she shouted, shaking her fist at the sky. You can't ruin my car and get away with it. The neighbors murmured, some nodding, some shaking their heads. Mr. Jenkins muttered, she's too loud, and hobbled back home. Mrs. Lopez bounced her baby and walked off. Karen didn't notice she was too busy freaking out. I stayed there, leaning on the door, sipping my juice slow. The glass was cold in my hand, the orange taste sweet on my tongue. The sun climbed higher, warming the street, but I felt cool as ice. Karen tried the car again, sputter, cough, smoke, and it died for good. She threw the keys on the ground and stormed inside, slamming her door so hard the windows rattled. The crowd thinned out, everyone whispering as they left. Poor Karen, some said. What a wreck, others mumbled. But me? I didn't feel bad. Not one bit. She'd started this war with her cement, thinking she could push me down. She'd laughed, smirked, bragged. Now her perfect car was a smoky pile of junk, and I'd done it. Me, Jake Miller, the quiet kid with the big plan. I finished my juice, set the glass down, and stretched my arms. The day was young, the air was fresh, and I felt like a king. Rusty barked from inside, probably hungry. I went in, fed him some kibble, and patted his head. We did it, boy, I whispered. He wagged his tail, clueless but happy. Outside, the street got quiet again, but I knew the show wasn't over. Karen would figure it out eventually, or maybe she wouldn't. Either way, her pride was toast, and I'd won. Sand beats cement any day. So there I was, Jake Miller, standing inside my house, feeding Rusty his kibble after the big morning show. Karen's scream still echoed in my head, my car. My car. And I couldn't stop grinning. Her shiny red car was a smoky wreck now, all because of me and that sneaky Sand. I'd pulled it off, and nobody knew. Not Mom, not Dad, not even Tommy or Mikey. It was my little secret, and it felt awesome. I grabbed a broom and swept the kitchen floor, acting normal so Mom wouldn't ask questions. She was in the living room, folding laundry, humming a song. "What's all that noise outside?" she called, not looking up. I shrugged, even though she couldn't see me. "Oh, just Karen yelling about her car," I said, keeping my voice flat. "It's broken or something." Mom clicked her tongue. "That woman's always loud about something," she muttered, stacking a shirt. I nodded to myself, sweeping faster. Yep, loud and mean, and now she was paying for it. Outside, things were calming down. I peeked through the window again, broom in hand. The neighbors had all gone back to their houses, leaving Karen's driveway empty except for that sad, smoky car. The black clouds had stopped puffing out, but the hood was still up, like the car was begging for help. The keys she'd thrown were still on the ground, glinting in the sun. I wondered if she'd call a tow truck or just stomp around mad all day. Either way, I didn't care. My job was done. I finished sweeping and plopped on the couch with a comic book, my favorite one about a kid superhero who tricks bad guys. Rusty jumped up next to me, curling into a fuzzy ball. I scratched his ears, flipping pages, but my mind wasn't on the story. It was on last night, creeping out, pouring that sand, watching it slide into her gas tank. Every grain had been like a little hot, for my ruined driveway. I could still feel the bag in my hands, heavy and rough, and hear that soft shhhh as the sand went in. Man, it was perfect. The clock ticked on the wall, tick, 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 and I kept my ears open. Karen wasn't done yet, I knew it. She'd come back out, make more noise, maybe even blame someone. I had to stay cool, play it smart. So I sat there, pretending to read, while my heart did little happy jumps. Rusty snored, his nose twitching, and I patted him. "We're the best team, huh?" I whispered. He didn't answer, but his wagging tail said yes. Sure enough, about an hour later, I heard her again. I slid off the couch and peeked out the window, staying low so she wouldn't spot me. Karen was back in her driveway, a phone pressed to her ear, pacing like a wildcat. Her robe flapped around her legs, and her hair was even messy now, sticking up like she'd tugged it 100 times. "Yes, it's broken," she shouted into the phone. "Smoke everywhere. I need someone here now." She kicked the car's tire again, hard, and I winced. That poor tire didn't do anything, it was her own fault for messing with me. I ducked lower, grinning. She was calling for help, probably a mechanic or a tow guy. Good luck with that, I thought. Sand in the gas tank isn't an easy fix. I'd heard Dad talk about car stuff before. It gums everything up, makes the engine choke. She'd be out of a car for days, maybe weeks. All that money she'd spent keeping it shiny. Wasted. All that bragging about how perfect it was. Gone. I hugged my knees, trying not to laugh out loud. Rusty lifted his head, tilting it like, "What's so funny?" I shushed him and kept watching. Karen hung up the phone and threw it on the grass. Yep, she was mad enough to toss stuff now. She marched around the car, hands on her hips, muttering stuff I couldn't hear. Then she stopped, staring at the gas tank. My stomach flipped. Did she know? Could she tell? I held my breath, waiting. She bent down, squinting at the flap, and ran her finger along it. I froze. Had I left sand on the outside? A smudge? Anything? But she just shook her head and stood up, kicking the ground. "Stupid car," she yelled, stomping back inside. Slam went her door again. I let out a big breath, slumping against the wall. She didn't know. Not yet. Maybe she'd figure it out later, when the mechanic looked inside, but for now, I was safe. I crawled back to the couch, my comic book waiting. Rusty licked my hand, and I laughed. Close one, huh? I said. He wagged his tail, happy just to be near me. Outside, the street was quiet again, but I knew it wouldn't last. Karen wasn't the type to let things go. She'd keep yelling, keep digging. But I'd been careful. No footprints, no flashlight glow, no noise. She had nothing on me. Lunchtime rolled around, and Mom called me to the kitchen. Grilled cheese, Jake, she said, sliding a plate across the table. The bread was golden, the cheese all melty, my favorite. I sat down, still buzzing inside, and took a big bite. Thanks, Mom, I mumbled, mouth full. She smiled and started washing dishes. Lily bounced in, her ponytail swinging. Can I have some? She asked, eyeing my sandwich. I tore off a piece and handed it to her. Here, squirt, I said. She giggled and ran off, happy as could be. While I ate, I kept one eye on the window. A big tow truck rumbled up the street, its lights flashing. It stopped at Karen's house, and a guy in a blue jumpsuit hopped out. Karen burst out her door, waving her arms like a windmill. Over here, she shouted. Fix it. Hurry. The tow guy scratched his head, looking at the smoky car. He popped the hood, peeked inside, then walked to the gas tank. My bite of sandwich stuck in my throat. Would he see the sand? Would he tell her right away? I swallowed hard and leaned closer to the window, pretending to tie my shoe so Mom wouldn't notice. The guy opened the gas flap, sniffed it, and frowned. He grabbed a flashlight from his pocket and shined it inside. My heart did a flip-flop. He knew something was up, I could tell by his face. He waved Karen over, and she stomped up, her robe flapping. What? What is it? She demanded. He said something quiet, pointing at the tank. Her mouth dropped open, and her hands flew to her face. Sand, she screeched, loud enough for me to hear through the glass. Who put sand in my car? I ducked down fast, hiding behind the table. My grilled cheese sat there, half-eaten, but I couldn't move. Sand. She said it. They'd found it. The tow guy shrugged, saying more stuff I couldn't hear, and Karen spun around, glaring at the whole street. I'll find you, she yelled, shaking her fist. Whoever did this is dead meat. The tow guy just sighed and started hooking up the car, like he didn't want any part of her tantrum. I crawled back to my chair, heart pounding again, but I wasn't scared. Nope. I was proud. She knew it was sand, but she didn't know it was me. No proof, no witnesses, just a mad lady and a broken car. I finished my sandwich, slow and calm, while the tow truck beeped and pulled her car away. Karen stood there, arms crossed, fuming as it disappeared down the street. Her perfect ride was gone, and I'd made it happen. Mom turned off the sink and glanced out. Poor Karen, she said, drying her hands. That car was her favorite. I nodded, all serious. Yeah, tough luck, I said, hiding my grin behind a napkin. Lily skipped back in, munching her piece of sandwich. Why's Karen yelling? She asked. Her car's sick, I said, ruffling her hair. She giggled and ran off again. Mom didn't ask more, just went back to her chores. I was in the clear. The rest of the day, I stayed chill. Played fetch with Rusty in the yard, read my comic, helped Dad with the trash when he got home. Nobody suspected a thing. Karen's house was quiet after the tow truck left, but I knew she was in there, steaming. She'd lost her pride, her shiny toy, and I'd won. My driveway was still a mess, sure, but I didn't care right then. I'd gotten her back, and it felt better than anything. So that was the big night and the big morning, the climax of it all. I'd snuck out, poured that sand, and watched her world fall apart. She thought she could bury me in cement, but I buried her pride in sand. And the best part? She'd never prove it was me. I was just Jake Miller, the quiet kid with a juice glass, smiling at the chaos I'd made. Karen called the cops, of course. I mean, what else was she gonna do? Her shiny red car was a smoky mess, towed away by that big truck, and she was madder than a cat in a bathtub. After she'd screamed and stomped all morning, I figured she'd try something big to get back at whoever did it. And yeah, she didn't know it was me, but she sure wanted to find out. So there I was, sitting on my porch with Rusty that afternoon, tossing him a stick, when a police car rolled up. Its lights flashed red and blue, and 2 cops stepped out, their boots crunching on the street. I stayed cool, leaning back in my chair like it was no big deal. Rusty barked once, wagging his tail, but I shushed him. "Easy, boy," I said, patting his head. Karen burst out of her house like a tornado, her robe flapping, her hair still a wild mess. "Over here," she yelled, waving her arms at the cops. "Someone ruined my car. I want them caught." The cops nodded, all serious, and walked over to her. I tossed the stick again, pretending I wasn't listening, but my ears were wide open. They asked her simple questions, like when did it happen, and did you see anybody? Karen flailed her hands, talking fast. "It was last night? I heard nothing, but this morning bam, smoke everywhere. Sand in my gas tank, that's what the tow guy said." The cops scribbled in little notebooks, their pens scratching loud enough for me to hear. One of them, a tall guy with a mustache, looked around. "Any witnesses?" he asked. Karen huffed, crossing her arms. "No, but it's gotta be someone here. Someone sneaky." I kept my face blank, tossing that stick for Rusty. He ran after it, happy as could be, while my heart did a tiny jump. "Sneaky? Yeah, that was me, but they'd never know." The cops turned to the neighbors next. Old Mr. Jenkins hobbled out with his cane, squinting at them. "Did you see anything last night?" the mustache cop asked. Mr. Jenkins shook his head. "Nope, slept like a rock," he grumbled, then went back inside. Mrs. Lopez came out with her baby, bouncing it on her hip. "Hear anything funny?" the other cop asked. She shrugged. "Just Karen yelling this morning," she said, smiling a little. The cops nodded, writing more. Then they walked my way. I sat up straighter, keeping my cool. Rusty dropped the stick at my feet, panting. The tall cop stopped in front of me, his shadow big on the porch. "Hey, kid," he said, nice but firm. "You see anything weird last night? Anyone near that car?" I looked up, all innocent, and shook my head. "Nope," I said, super calm. "I was asleep. Didn't hear a thing." He stared at me for a second, like he was trying to peek inside my brain, but I just blinked back, sipping some water from a glass I'd brought out. The other cop, a shorter guy with glasses, wrote something down. "Okay, thanks," the tall one said, and they moved on. I let out a quiet breath, tossing the stick again. No proof, no problem. Nobody saw me sneak out. No one heard the sand pour. I'd been quiet as a mouse, careful as could be. The cops asked a few more people, Tommy's mom, Mikey's dad, but they all said the same thing: nope, didn't see nothing. Karen stood there, fuming, her face redder every time someone shrugged. "Someone did it," she shouted, stomping her foot. "You're not looking hard enough." The mustache cop sighed, closing his notebook. "We'll keep an eye out, ma'am," he said, "but without proof, there's not much we can do." Then they got in their car and drove off, lights flashing one last time. Karen glared at the whole street, hands on her hips, like she wanted to yell some more. But the neighbors were done. They shuffled back inside, tired of her noise. She kicked the ground, muttered something mean, and stormed into her house. Slam went her door again. I grinned, petting Rusty. She could call all the cops she wanted, but she'd never catch me. I was too smart, too sneaky. Justice was mine, and it felt good. Her car was gone now, hauled off to some shop. I heard her whining about it for weeks after that. She'd sit on her porch with her tea, complaining to anyone who'd listen, usually just her 2 big hat friends. "The repair bill's huge," she'd cry, waving her hands. "Hundreds of dollars. And they say it might not even work right again." Her friends nodded, sipping their drinks, but I could tell they were bored. One time, I was riding my scooter nearby. Yeah, I'd gotten it out since my bike was still stuck, and I heard her say, "Whoever did this hates me. They're jealous of my car." I zipped past, hiding a laugh. Jealous? Nope. Just mad about my driveway. Meanwhile, I got my driveway fixed. It took a while, but Dad called a guy with a big machine one weekend. He came with a loud truck, all rumbling and beeping, and chipped away the cement. It took hours. Bang, crack, crunch, and dust flew everywhere. Rusty barked at the noise, running circles in the yard, while Lily watched from the window, her nose pressed to the glass. "Cool," she yelled, clapping. I stood with Dad, hands in my pockets, watching the gray mess disappear. The guy scooped it up, smoothed the pavement, and by the end, it was clean, smooth and shiny, no thanks to Karen. "Looks good, huh?" Dad said, wiping sweat off his forehead. I nodded, kicking a pebble. "Yeah, way better." My bike was free now, too. The cement guy had yanked it out, and yeah, it was scratched up bad, but I didn't care. I'd fix it later, paint it blue again, make it mine. For now, the driveway was back, and that was a win. Karen didn't help, didn't say sorry, didn't even look our way while the truck worked. She just sat inside, probably mad her plan flopped. The neighbors noticed the change, not just my driveway, but Karen too. They started avoiding her more after the car mess. Before, they'd wave or say hi, even if she was grumpy. Now, they'd cross the street when she walked by, or pretend they didn't see her. Mr. Jenkins told Dad one day, "She's too loud, too mean." "Tired of it?" Mrs. Lopez giggled to Mom, "Maybe she'll quiet down now." Even Tommy and Mikey said stuff like, "Karen's not so tough anymore, huh?" I just shrugged, playing dumb, but I saw it. Her tantrums had worn everyone out, and her broken car made her look silly, not scary. Me. I kept my head down, like always. I'd ride my scooter, play with Rusty, help Mom with chores. Normal kid stuff. But something was different. When neighbors walked by, they'd nod at me now, little nods, quick smiles, like they knew I'd won something. Mr. Jenkins winked once, slow and sneaky, and said, "Good job, kid," before hobbling off. I blinked, surprised, but didn't ask what he meant. Did he guess? Maybe. He was old and smart, always watching. Mrs. Lopez patted my head one day, saying, "You're a quiet one, Jake, but strong." I grinned and said, "Thanks, not giving anything away." Karen didn't mess with me again, not directly, anyway. She'd glare from her porch sometimes, her eyes narrow, like she was trying to figure me out. Once, she muttered, "That kid's too quiet," loud enough for me to hear as I swept leaves. I just waved, all polite, hiding my smirk. She'd learned her lesson the hard way, don't mess with someone who's got a trick up their sleeve. She thought her cement would shut me down, make me cry or run. Nope. It woke me up, lit a fire, and I burned her back quietly, sneakily, perfectly. Weeks turned into months, and things settled. My driveway stayed clean, my bike got a new coat of blue paint, and Karen's car? It came back eventually, but it wasn't the same. The shine was dull, the engine growled funny, and she didn't brag anymore. She'd drive it slow, wincing at every bump, like it might break again. Neighbors whispered, "Poor thing," but they didn't mean it. They were glad she'd calmed down. Her big hat friends stopped coming as much, too. Guess they got tired of her whining. And me? I proved I wasn't just some pushover kid. I was Jake Miller, quiet, sure, but tough. Smart. Sneaky. I didn't need to yell or fight with fists, my brain was enough. Karen thought she ruled the street, but I showed her she didn't rule me. Every time I rode past her house, bell ringing ding ding, I'd smile to myself. Justice was served, and it tasted sweet like orange juice on a sunny day. So, here's the thing, friends, sometimes the loudest people think they're in charge, but the quiet ones? They're the ones with the real power. Yep, that's what I learned from this whole crazy mess with Karen. She was loud, super loud, like a big horn honking all the time. She yelled, she bossed, she strutted around like she owned the whole world. She thought she could walk all over me, just 'cause I'm a kid who doesn't talk a ton. She thought her cement would make me give up, cry, or run away. But guess what? She never saw the sand coming. Not in a million years. Let me tell you why that matters. See, Karen was all about being big and noisy. She'd shout at me about my bike, scream about her car, and brag to her friends like she was the queen of the street. Everyone heard her, neighbors, kids, even the birds probably flew away when she opened her mouth. She thought that made her strong, that it scared people into doing what she wanted. And maybe it worked on some folks. Mr. Jenkins grumbled but stayed out of her way, and Mrs. Lopez just smiled and nodded. But me? Nope. I didn't need to yell back. I didn't need to stomp or cry. I used my head, stayed quiet, and bam, I flipped everything around. That's the cool part, friends. You don't have to be the loudest to win. You don't have to wave your arms or make a big fuss. Sometimes, being quiet is better. It's sneakier, smarter, stronger. Karen didn't get that. She saw me as some little kid, easy to push, easy to beat. She didn't know I was watching, planning, waiting. She didn't know I had power inside me, power she couldn't see till it was too late. That sand in her car? It wasn't loud. It didn't shout. It just slid in, soft and silent, and took her perfect ride down. That's real strength, doing big things without making a peep. What about you? Ever turned the tables on someone who underestimated you? Maybe it was a bully at school who thought you'd back down. Maybe it was a friend who laughed at your ideas. Or maybe it was someone like Karen, all big and bossy, thinking they could step on you cause you're not loud. Did you surprise them? Did you show them you're tougher than they thought? I bet you did, or I bet you could. Drop it in the comments below. I want to hear your stories. Tell me how you flipped it around, how you proved them wrong. Let's share some cool wins together. This whole adventure with Karen taught me something big. Don't let people trick you into thinking loud is the only way to be strong. She was loud, sure, but she lost. I was quiet, and I won. It's like in the superhero comics I read. Sometimes the hero doesn't blast through walls or yell from rooftops. Sometimes they sneak in, outsmart the bad guy, and save the day without anyone knowing till it's over. That's me, Jake Miller, the sneaky sand kid. And that can be you too, strong in your own way, even if nobody sees it coming. Let's think about that for a sec. Karen thought she had it all figured out. She dumped cement on my driveway, smirked like she'd won a prize, and strutted around like the boss. She didn't care that it was mean, she just wanted to feel big. But here's the funny thing, being mean doesn't make you big. It just makes you loud. And loud doesn't last. People got tired of her, neighbors stopped waving, her friends stopped visiting, even the cops didn't stick around. She thought she was on top, but she ended up alone, whining about a car that didn't shine anymore. Me. I didn't need to be loud to feel big. I fixed things my way, quiet, sneaky, smart. I got my driveway back, smooth and clean, and I showed Karen she couldn't push me around. The neighbors nodded at me now, like they knew I'd done something cool, even if they didn't say it out loud. That felt better than any yelling ever could. It's like planting a seed. You don't see it grow right away, but one day it's a big tree, tall and strong, and everyone notices. That's what I did. I planted my sand, waited, and watched it grow into a win. So what's the lesson here, friends? It's simple, you've got power, even if you're not the loudest kid on the block. Maybe you're quiet like me, watching, thinking, planning. Maybe you're good at stuff nobody expects, drawing, building, making people laugh. Whatever it is, don't let anyone trick you into thinking you're small just cause you don't shout. Karen underestimated me, and look what happened. Her car's a mess, and I'm still smiling. You can do that too, surprise the world with what's inside you. Let's talk about turning the tables some more. Think about a time someone thought they had you beat. Maybe it was a game, soccer, tag, whatever, and they laughed cause they thought you'd lose. But then you ran faster, kicked harder, or dodged just right, and bam, you won. Or maybe it was homework. Someone said, you can't do that, but you worked hard and got it done. That's turning the tables, taking what they think and flipping it upside down. It's the best feeling, right? Like eating ice cream after a hot day, all sweet and cool. I bet you've got stories like that. Maybe a teacher didn't think you'd finish a project, but you did it awesome. Maybe a big kid picked on you, but you stood up, quiet and strong, and they backed off. Tell me about it below. I want to know how you showed them, how you proved you're not just some pushover. We're all in this together, friends, quiet kids, sneaky kids, smart kids. We've got power, and we can use it to make things right. And that's the story. Crazy, right? It started with a bossy lady and a messed up driveway, and it ended with me grinning and her car puffing smoke. Karen thought she'd bury me, but I buried her pride instead. It's wild how things turn out sometimes, how the quiet ones can come out on top. I learned a lot from it, and I hope you did too. Don't let the loud people fool you. Strength isn't about noise. It's about what you do, even when no one's looking. Stick around for more wild tales, cause I've got plenty. This was just one adventure, me versus Karen, the cement queen. There's more where that came from: sneaky plans, cool wins, funny stuff. Hit that subscribe button if you like this, and tell me in the comments what you think. Did Karen get what she deserved? Would you have used sand too? What's your trick for turning the tables? I'll read every word, I promise. Before I go, let's think about one more thing. Karen's out there now, probably still mad, still glaring from her porch. But me? I'm riding my bike again, bell ringing, ding ding, feeling free. She can't stop me, she never could. And nobody can stop you either, friends. You've got your own power, your own tricks, your own way to shine. So next time someone underestimates you, smile to yourself, plan your move, and show them what you've got. Quiet or loud, big or small, you're stronger than they know. So, here's the thing, friends, sometimes the loudest people think they're in charge, but the quiet ones? They're the ones with the real power. That's what I was saying, right? Karen was the loudest lady on the block, yelling about my bike, stomping around, acting like she ruled everything. She thought she could walk all over me, just cause I'm not the kid who shouts back. She poured that cement on my driveway, smirked like she'd won a gold medal, and figured I'd just sit there and take it. But nope, she never saw the sand coming. Not in her wildest dreams. Let's rewind a bit and think about that. Karen was loud from the start, her voice booming across the street, her hands waving like flags. She'd yell at me, "Move that junk," and laugh with her friends like it was a big joke. She thought being loud made her the boss, made people scared of her. And yeah, some folks stayed out of her way. Tommy and Mikey told me to let it go, and even old Mr. Jenkins kept his grumbling quiet around her. She loved that. It made her feel tall, like a giant stomping over little ants. But me? I wasn't an ant. I was a sneaky fox, waiting in the shadows, ready to pounce. That's what I mean about quiet power, friends. It's not about yelling or making noise, it's about doing stuff smart, stuff that hits hard without a sound. Karen's cement was loud, wet and sloppy, ruining my driveway with a big splash. Everyone saw it, heard her brag about it. But my sand? Oh, that was quiet. Slipping into her gas tank, soft as a whisper, it didn't need to shout to win. It just did its job, and bam, her car was toast. That's the trick, you don't have to be loud to be strong. You just have to be clever. What about you? Ever turned the tables on someone who underestimated you? I asked that before, but let's dig deeper. Maybe it was a kid at school who thought you couldn't kick a ball far, but then you did, and it flew across the field. Maybe it was a teacher who said, "That's too hard for you," but you worked and got an A. Or maybe it was someone bossy like Karen, telling you what to do, thinking you'd just nod and obey. Did you surprise them? Did you show them you're not so small after all? Drop those stories in the comments, I'm dying to read them. Tell me how you flipped it, how you made them blink and go, "Whoa, I was wrong." This whole thing with Karen was like a big lesson for me. I learned that loud doesn't always win, sometimes it just makes you look silly. Karen thought she'd crushed me with that cement, thought she'd scared me into hiding. Ha! All she did was wake me up. I got mad. Sure, my bike stuck in that gray mess made my tummy hot, but I didn't yell back. I didn't run to mom or dad crying. I sat, I thought, I watched. And then I struck quiet as a mouse, sneaky as a snake. That's my kind of power, and it worked better than any shouting ever could. Let's picture it one more time, cause it's fun. Karen out there, pouring cement, laughing like a villain in a cartoon. Me, sipping juice, planning my sand attack. Her car puffing smoke, her screaming in her robe, me leaning on the door all calm. It's like a movie, right? The loud bad guy thinks they've got it all, but the quiet hero sneaks in and wins. That's what happened here. She underestimated me, and I turned it around. Sand in the tank, game over. So what's that mean for you, friends? It means you've got power to your own special kind. Maybe you're not loud like Karen, and that's okay. Maybe you're quiet like me, or maybe you're somewhere in between. Doesn't matter. What matters is what's inside your brain, your heart, your ideas. You don't need to shout to show it. You can draw something amazing, build something cool, help a friend, or even just wait for the right moment to shine. That's strength, real strength, and nobody can take it away. Think about the loud people you know. Are they always the winners? Nah. Sometimes they're just noise, like a big wind that blows and then stops. Karen was that wind, blowing hard, messing stuff up, but she couldn't keep it going. Her car broke, her friends got bored, and the neighbors turned away. Me. I was the little stream, quiet, steady, cutting through the rock till it split. That's how you win sometimes, not with a bang, but with a trickle that grows. I keep asking about your stories cause I know you've got 'em. Maybe it was a race you weren't supposed to win, but you ran fast and crossed the line first. Maybe it was a joke someone didn't think you'd get, but you laughed loudest. Or maybe it was a fight like me and Karen where someone pushed you, and you pushed back your way. Tell me below. I wanna cheer for you, just like I cheered for myself when Karen's car went kaput. We're a team, us quiet fighters, and we've got the best tricks. And that's the story. Crazy, right? It started with a mean lady and a ruined driveway, and it ended with me smiling and her car smoking. Wild, wild, wild. Karen thought she'd bury me, but I buried her pride instead. It's funny how things flip, how the loudest can fall, and the quietest can rise. I learned I'm not just some kid, I'm Jake Miller, sneaky and strong. And you? You're not just anybody either, you're you, with your own power waiting to pop out. Stick around for more wild tales, cause I've got tons. This was one big adventure, me against Karen, the cement queen turned car loser. But there's more coming, sneaky stuff, funny stuff, cool stuff. Hit that subscribe button if you like this, and spill your thoughts in the comments. Did Karen deserve it? Would you use sand too? What's your secret move when someone underestimates you? I'll read every single one, I swear. Let's wrap it up with one last thought. Karen's still out there, probably glaring from her porch, mad as ever. But me? I'm riding my bike, bell going ding ding, free and happy. She couldn't stop me, she never had a chance. And nobody can stop you either, friends. You've got your own spark, your own way to win. So next time someone thinks you're small, grin inside, make your plan, and show 'em what you've got. Quiet or not, you're a champ and the world's gonna see it. See you in the next one, pals. Keep being awesome, keep flipping those tables, and let's make more crazy stories together.